So we come to the second unit. The second unit is NAAC framework, 7 criteria. And this unit constitutes the core of my presentation. It is here that I would be talking about the 7 criteria, the key indicators, the metrics, both quantitative and qualitative. Okay. Now, in my first slide, when I talked about assessment, I said all assessments, all evaluations, and all analysis, they are carried out on the basis of certain pre-established criteria or pre-established yardsticks. Okay. So as far as NAAC is concerned, there are 7 criteria, and these 7 criteria are common to both colleges and universities, and within colleges they are common to, they are applicable in equal measure to autonomous colleges, affiliated colleges, constituent colleges. Now, what are the 7 criteria? The first criterion is curricular aspects. The second criterion is teaching, learning, and evaluation. The third criterion is research, innovations, and extension. The fourth criterion is infrastructure and learning resources. The fifth criterion is student support and progression. The sixth criterion is governance, leadership, and management. And the seventh criterion is institutional values and best practices. So these are the 7 criteria. And using these 7 criteria, NAAC assesses and evaluates colleges and universities. How does it do it? We will get to know more about it in the following slides. Now, the same thing, but there is an additional piece of information. You will see some numbers here, and for each criterion, there are 4 numbers. So possibly you're wondering why these 4 numbers. Now, I made it very clear whether it is a college or a university, whether it is an autonomous college or an affiliated college, whether it is a rural college or an urban college. For all institutions, for all higher educational institutions, NAAC follows 7 criteria. Now, probably you are not very happy because, as we all know, there are important differences, there are crucial differences, let us say, between a university and a college. There are important differences between a rural college and an urban college, between the college which offers only undergraduate programs and the college which offers postgraduate programs. Now, NAAC recognizes these differences. So therefore, what NAAC has done is, while the 7 criteria are the same for all institutions, the distribution of weightage, there is a difference. So please remember there are 2 things. Number one, for all the higher educational institutions, the 7 criteria are the same, but the weightage, the allocation of marks, the distribution of marks, that is different. So that is why the 4 columns. Now the first number refers to universities, the second number refers to autonomous colleges, the third number refers to affiliated colleges, UG, and the fourth number refers to affiliated colleges, PG. Okay, so curricular aspects. I'll just highlight for 2 criteria. So the first criteria is curricular aspects. Now, as far as universities and autonomous colleges are concerned, the weightage for the first criterion, namely curricular aspects, is 150. Whereas in the case of an affiliated college or a constituent college, whether it is a UG or a PG, it is only 100. Now, why this differential treatment? Now, the answer is very simple. Universities can frame their own curriculum. Similarly, autonomous colleges also can frame their own curriculum. So therefore, the weightage for curricular aspects with reference to universities and autonomous colleges is higher than affiliated and constituent colleges, because in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, they have no say in the design of curriculum. It is the affiliating university, it is the parent university that decides on the curriculum. And all that the affiliated college has to do is to implement the curriculum. So therefore, the weightage for affiliated colleges, both UG and PG, is only 100. So therefore, the differential treatment. Similarly, when it comes to teaching, learning, and evaluation, in the case of universities, it is only 200. Whereas in the case of autonomous colleges, it is 300. But in the case of affiliated colleges, both UG and PG, it is 350 each. Okay. Whereas when we come to the third criterion, now in my earlier presentation, when I talked about the differences between colleges and universities, I made this point very clear. Colleges, the primary focus is teaching, whereas in the case of universities, the focus is research. So when we talk about the third criterion, for universities, the weightage that is allotted is 250. Now, for affiliated colleges, UG and PG, it is only around 100, 110 and 120. So which means more than double the weightage of what is allocated to affiliated colleges we have for universities. And the reason is obvious. Universities are places where research should happen. Okay, so this slide tells you two things. Number one, what are the 7 criteria and what is the weightage? And when we talk about the weightage, we realize that the same weightage is not given to all the 4 kinds of institutions. And what are the 4 kinds of institutions? We have universities, we have autonomous colleges, we have affiliated colleges which offer only UG programs, and we have affiliated colleges which offer PG programs, both UG and PG. So the criteria remain the same, but the distribution of weightage is different. Now, please take a look at this slide. This slide is very important because, as I said earlier in my opening remarks, there are 3 key concepts with reference to NAAC assessment and accreditation. Okay, so please look at the first column, the first row. It talks about criteria. So, okay, so there are 7 criteria. And what are the 7 criteria? My previous 2 slides have talked about the 7 criteria. So the 7 criteria, they are the basis, they are the foundation. Now, within the criteria, within the first criterion, or within the second criterion, or within the 6th criterion, or within the 7th criterion, there are key indicators. This is like you take a book and you divide the book into different chapters. So the chapters would be analogous to criteria, and within the chapter, you have the subtitles, the subheadings, they would be the key indicators. So we have the 7 criteria and we have the key indicators. And look at the number of key indicators. In the case of universities and autonomous colleges, it is 34 each. Whereas in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, which offer both UG and PG programs, we have 32 key indicators, whereas in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, which offer only UG programs, we have only 31 key indicators. Okay, so I said there are 3 key issues. Number 1, criteria, 7 criteria, then key indicators, 34, 34, 32, and 31. Then we have metrics. Okay, and the metrics are divided into qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics. Okay, so when we talk of qualitative metrics, it is 36 for universities, 35 for autonomous colleges, 36 for affiliated and constituent colleges PG, and 35 for affiliated and constituent colleges 35 UG. Now, when it comes to quantitative metrics, it is 79 for universities, whereas it is 72 for autonomous colleges, and it is 60 for affiliated and constituent colleges PG, and 58 for affiliated and constituent colleges UG. Okay, fine. Now, criteria, you are familiar with the term criteria, 7 criteria. Key indicators, these are the key indicators that constitute a particular criterion. So the criteria, the criterion, a particular criterion is broken up into different components, and they are the key indicators. So therefore, you would like to ask me, what is this qualitative metrics and what is this quantitative metrics? Now look at the word quantitative. Data, figures, facts. How many students are there? How many teachers are there in this institution with PhD? So these are data, these are quantitative. So it is quantified. Okay, so therefore they are called quantitative metrics. Now, what are the best practices of this institution, or what is unique about this particular institution that cannot be quantified? So you need to describe it, you need to talk about it, you need to articulate it. So therefore it is called a qualitative metrics. So dear friends, this is an important slide, and this slide talks about 3 key issues. Criteria, and criteria are broken up into key indicators, and we have metrics, qualitative metrics and quantitative metrics. And invariably, we have more quantitative metrics than qualitative metrics because it is easy to calculate and therefore it is easy to evaluate and it is objective to a large extent. Okay, now we will be talking only about affiliated and constituent colleges, both UG and PG. Here I am not talking of universities, nor am I talking about autonomous colleges. My focus will be on affiliated and constituent colleges, both UG and PG. So these are the 7 criteria. And what is the weightage that is given to affiliated and constituent college that offers only UG programs? And what is the weightage that is given to affiliated and constituent colleges that offers both UG and PG programs? So with reference to the first criterion, curricular aspects, 100 is the weightage for UG and 100 is the weightage for PG as well. There is no difference in terms of weightage. Similarly, when it comes to teaching, learning and evaluation, there is no difference between UG and PG colleges. The weightage is the same, namely 350. But when we come to the third criterion, namely research, innovations, and extension, in the case of colleges which offer both UG and PG, it is 10 more than what has been allocated to affiliated and constituent colleges which offer only UG. Now, in terms of infrastructure and learning resources, there is no difference between a UG and a PG institution. It is 100 each. When it comes to student support and progression, for UG colleges, it is 10 more than what has been allotted to PG colleges. In terms of governance, leadership, and management, it is 100 each. In terms of institutional values and best practices, it is 100 each. In other words, there is only a minor difference between an institution, an affiliated and constituent college that offers only UG programs and an affiliated and constituent college that offers both UG and PG programs. There is no major deviation or major difference. There are only minor differences between these two sets of institutions. Now you please take a look at it. It talks about the 7 criteria. It talks about QEN. QEN stands for quantitative metrics. What is quantified? Data, figures, numbers. And the third column talks about qualitative metrics. What cannot be quantified? I gave you examples like best practices, institutional distinctiveness or uniqueness. These cannot be quantified. These can only be described or articulated, narrated. So therefore it is qualitative. Then the last column talks about quantitative plus qualitative with reference to each criterion. So for instance, for the first criterion, curricular aspects, in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, please look at the top line, which offers both UG and PG programs, 8 quantitative metrics and 3 qualitative metrics. And therefore, with reference to the first criterion, we have a total of 11 metrics, quantitative and qualitative put together. So you can take a look at this slide. This is an important slide. Now, the next 7 slides, what are the 7 criteria? Now, by now we are already familiar with the 7 criteria, but we are not familiar with the key indicators. Now, I gave you the analogy of a book and the different chapters that constitute the book. So, the criterion, the first criterion, second criterion, up to the 6th and the 7th, they are like the chapters of the book. Okay, now what constitutes the individual chapter? What are the key points? So they are the key indicators. So with reference to each criterion, I would like to spell out, I would like to articulate the key indicators. Now, I would like to make it clear, this is with reference to affiliated and constituent colleges which offer UG programs and those institutions which offer UG and PG programs. I am not talking of universities, nor am I talking of autonomous colleges. So in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges with reference to criterion 1, there are 4 key indicators. 1.1, curriculum design and development, that has been struck off because that applies only to universities and autonomous colleges which have the autonomy and the freedom to frame, to design their own curriculum. Now, this autonomy is not available to affiliated and constituent colleges. So therefore, curriculum design and development has been struck off. So with reference to affiliated and constituent colleges, we have 4 key indicators with reference to criterion 1. Curricular planning and implementation, the weightage it carries is 20. Together, the first criterion, it has 4 key indicators and the weightage allotted is 100. We go to the second criterion. Now, the second criterion is the most important criterion with reference to not universities, with reference to affiliated and constituent colleges. And the reason is obvious. It carries 350 marks. I repeat, in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, both UG and PG, the second criterion, namely teaching, learning, and evaluation, is the most important criterion, is the most significant criterion for a very simple reason. It carries the maximum weightage 350. So therefore, affiliated colleges and constituent colleges should focus on this particular criterion because this carries the maximum weight. If they score well with reference to this particular criterion, then they can ensure that they will do well. Okay, so with reference to this particular criterion, we have 7 key indicators. 2.1, it talks of student enrollment and profile. The weightage is 40. 2.2, catering to student diversity, the weightage is 50. 2.3, teaching learning process, 50. 2.4, teacher profile and quality, the weightage is 60. 2.5, evaluation process and reforms, 30. 2.6, student performance and learning outcomes, 60. And lastly, we have a key indicator which was introduced recently. It is called Student Satisfaction Survey and it carries 60 marks. So I repeat, for affiliated and constituent colleges, this is the most important criterion because it carries the maximum weightage. So therefore, affiliated and constituent colleges should pay attention to the 7 key indicators that constitute criterion 2. Now, criterion 3, in the case of affiliated and constituent colleges, it is only 110, whereas in the case of universities, it is more than double, and the reason is obvious. An undergraduate college is not expected to do a higher order research, whereas universities are supposed to do good research, quality research, so therefore this differential treatment. So criterion 3 is research, innovations, and extension. And it has, in fact, there are 7 criteria, but 2 do not apply to affiliated and constituent colleges. So in effect, there are only 4 key indicators for UG colleges and 5 key indicators for PG colleges with reference to criterion 3. So 3.1, promotion of research and facilities. This applies only to universities and autonomous colleges and does not apply to affiliated and constituent colleges. 3.2, resource mobilization for research. 3.3, innovation ecosystem. And please note, innovation ecosystem does not apply to affiliated and constituent colleges which offer only UG programs. It applies, it is applicable only to affiliated and constituent colleges which offer PG programs, even then the weightage is a paltry 10. Then 3.4, research publications and awards. 3.5, consultancy. There is no consultancy for affiliated and constituent colleges. Only autonomous colleges and universities are supposed to take up consultancy and generate some revenue through consultancy. 3.6, extension activities, extension and outreach activities. Then 3.7, collaboration. Okay, how many MOUs the institution has signed. So that would come under collaboration. So criterion 3, it focuses on research. Now, this criterion is important for universities and secondly for autonomous colleges, but not very important or not as important as it is for universities and autonomous colleges. So criterion 4 talks of infrastructure and learning resources. The weightage is 100 and there is no difference between the UG institution and the PG institution. It is 100 for each category. There are 4 key indicators: physical facilities like classrooms, staff rooms, playgrounds, then library as a learning resource, IT infrastructure, computers, internet. Then 4.4, maintenance of campus infrastructure. Okay, so this is simple and clear. Infrastructure and learning resources, the weightage is 100. Criterion 5, student support and progression. There are 5 key indicators. 5.1, student support, the weightage is 50. 5.2, student progression. In the case of UG, it is 30. In the case of PG, it is 5 less 25. 5.3, student participation and activities. Once again, there is a minor difference between UG and PG institutions. And 5.4, alumni engagement, the contribution of the alumni to their alma mater, both in kind and in cash. Okay, so this is criterion 4, student support and progression, and it carries 4 indicators, and there are minor differences between UG and PG institutions. So we have 2 more criteria. Criterion 6 talks of governance, leadership, and management. The weightage is 100. The weightage is 100 not only for UG and PG, but also for universities and autonomous colleges. In other words, we have 4 different categories of higher educational institutions. For all the 4 categories, it is 100. The weightage is 100, and it has 5 key indicators: institutional vision and leadership, strategy development and deployment, faculty empowerment strategies, financial management and resource mobilization. And 6.5 is internal quality assurance system, which carries 30. We come to the last criterion, and this marks the end of the second unit. The last criterion talks of institutional values and best practices, and the weightage is 100. And it is 100 for all the 4 categories: universities, autonomous colleges, affiliated colleges, UG and affiliated colleges, PG. And there are 3 key indicators. And the first key indicator is 7.1, institutional values and social responsibility. There are 5 components under this key indicator: gender equity, environmental consciousness and sustainability, differently able friendliness, inclusion and situatedness, human values and professional ethics. So that is 7.1. Then 7.2, best practices. Each institution has to talk about 2 of its best practices. I am sure there are many best practices. Probably every individual department has its own best practice. Okay, but the institution as a whole is expected to report 2 of its best practices when it prepares its SSR, self-study report. And the last one is something new. This was introduced very recently when NAAC revised its manual, and I was part of it. 7.3, institutional distinctiveness, which carries 20 marks. So dear friends, that marks the end of segment 2 or unit 2. Now this is the most important unit in my presentation, because it is here that I have talked about the 7 criteria. It is here that I have talked about the key indicators. And it is here that I talked about the metrics, both qualitative and quantitative. And I also enabled you to realize that while the criteria are the same for all the 4 categories of institutions, the distribution is a little different, because universities, the focus is a little different from what the focus of an undergraduate institution is. So therefore, the differential treatment. So this marks the end of the second unit.